Hello and welcome. What began as a day of hope for millions of Indians across the world ended up being a day of so close and yet so far. The Vikram lander, meant to touch down on the moon, may have crash landed on the lunar surface. What is clear, however, is that moments before the touchdown was supposed to happen, when the lander was about 2.1 kilometers away from its landing spot, communications were lost. The Prime Minister, who was at the ISRO Mission Control in Bengaluru, reached out to the scientists with one clear message: keep your chin up, India is with you, we are proud of your achievements.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi hugging the ISRO chief and India's top space scientist Dr. K. Sivan, who got emotional after ISRO's plan to soft land Chandrayaan 2's lander Vikram on the moon surface did not go as per script early this morning. The lander lost communication with the ground stations during its final descent seconds before it was supposed to touch down on the moon surface. Hours after India's space agency announced that communication with the Chandrayaan 2 lander was lost.
Confirm any signal from station.
Prime Minister Modi, who was at the ISRO Center in Bengaluru, watching and tracking updates as tense moments unfolded, spoke to the ISRO community from the Mission Control Center.
जब इसरो के पास सक्सेस की एनसाइक्लोपीडिया हो तो रुकावट के एक दो लम्हों से आपकी उड़ान आउट ऑफ ट्रेजेक्टरी नहीं हो सकती, और इसीलिए तो देश आपके प्रति गर्व करता है। मेरा आप पर भी विश्वास है, मुझसे भी आपके सपने और ऊंचे हैं। मैंने सुबह सुबह आपके दर्शन आपसे प्रेरणा पाने के लिए किए हैं। The best is yet to come. India is with you.
So what has happened in these tense minutes when ISRO lost contact with the Vikram lander? 1:40 a.m. lander begins its powered descent towards the lunar surface. 1:52 a.m. Vikram lander strays from the planned trajectory. 1:53 a.m. lander loses contact with the ground station. 2:16 a.m. ISRO announces communication lost and they are analyzing data. Just before the Vikram lander began its crucial descent, Project Director M. Vanitha was seen excitedly cheering the mission, with the Prime Minister eagerly watching from the control room. Around 1:50 a.m., a noticeable change in the trajectory plot was seen. Around 1:52 a.m., a pall of gloom descended on the control center. Scientists then went into a huddle. ISRO chairman Dr. K. Sivan then walked up to meet Prime Minister Modi and briefed him. At 2:16 a.m., ISRO chairman Dr. K. Sivan made the announcement.
Vikram lander descent was as planned and normal performance was observed up to an altitude of 2.1 kilometer. Subsequently, the communications from the lander to ground station was lost. The data is being analyzed.
ISRO continues to analyze what led to the setback.
OD Vikram, confirm station, configuration for receiving both S-band and X-band are configured.
RF to confirm.
But all is not lost with the moon mission. The Chandrayaan 2 orbiter continues to function. The orbiter can still take pictures of the lander to find out its status. The orbiter can also take pictures of the moon and send it to ISRO. The orbiter's mission life is 1 year, while the Vikram lander and the Pragyan rover had a mission life of 14 days. The claps in the control room led to grim faces in the control room. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was not seen clapping. 2.1 kilometers above the moon surface, the Vikram lander lost touch with the ground station. Things are not looking good for the Vikram lander. inside ISRO in Bengaluru, Pallav Bagla for NDTV.
Well, in just the last little while, the first statement of the ISRO chief, Mr. Sivan, has been coming in. The first statement since the announcement of something having gone wrong. Let's listen into what he says and then try and understand what the implications are.
Right now the communication is lost, but we will be trying to communicate, trying to establish a link. Okay. That effort will be going on. Maybe next 14 days we will try. Okay. And if at all we are succeeding, that we will be able to operate that payloads, and the required data will get it. Whatever happened today is not going to affect any of the ongoing activities. And the mission, whatever we talked, it is not a failure. It is not, we are not having any setback. Yes, we have a small percentage of information we lost, that's all. Otherwise, that they are right. Now, Prime Minister is always creates the source of strength and inspiration for all of us. And that his words were really was encouraging. And when people are slightly down with that untoward incident towards the end of the landing phase, but his words really put us back in the track.
An important statement over there with Mr. Sivan saying that for 14 days they're going to try and establish communication with the lander. That's a fairly surprising statement, but what remains unanswered is there therefore evidence that the lander is in a condition or in a shape whereby it might actually be able to communicate, or is this an effort to try and see whether there is some communication which can be established by or if they pick up some sort of communication from the rover and the lander. It's unclear what exactly he means by this. Is there some channel, some communication window which is open, which has resulted in some sort of communication? Is there any hope at all? Ajay Lele, a research fellow at IDSA, the Institute of Defence Studies and Analysis, here with me. Dr. Srimati Kesan, the founder and CEO of Space Kids. Dr. Chaitanya Giri, Fellow of the Space and Ocean Studies Organization at Gateway House, and Dr. Amitabh Ghosh from the United States joins us. He's a leading NASA scientist. Dr. Ghosh, let me come to you first. It's interesting what Mr. Sivan had to say, that it's going to take 14 days before they actually go further. In 14 days, they're going to try and communicate. Why would he say this? Is there anything over here to suggest that they haven't lost hope?
So I think this is kind of the search phase. I mean, it is very tough to say, but if there was a device out there, one is, why did it suddenly lose communication? And two is, even if it did lose communication, if it was a trivial issue, we should have re-established communication in minutes or hours. So the fact that we are going to touch maybe 12 hours plus and no communication has been received is certainly not a good sign. So I think it's probably a much more expanded search. I think they're going to try to find out what exactly is happening. Does the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter or another spacecraft around the moon, is it able to sight the spacecraft? See, it is certainly not flying anymore, the Vigyan and Pragyan. So they must have, it's on the ground. And now if it's on the ground, is it in good shape or is it not in good shape? So those are the questions. Okay. So I wouldn't read too much into that there's a communication channel still available, if that is what you're asking.
Yeah, that's strange that he would actually try and look for that. Dr. Chaitanya Giri, how do we look for a lander on the lunar surface? NASA has long-range sensors, they've got long-range telescopes. ISRO, I believe, is contracted with NASA to actually use those if required. So could those be used to actually spot the Vikram lander?
It will be difficult to really identify or locate the lander from Earth-based telescope. But what we can employ are the orbiting orbiters which belong to several countries which are currently orbiting the moon. they could be of some help. But having said that, landers usually, we don't know where it has landed. Has it landed at the same place where it was supposed to, or has it landed slightly off? Like I said earlier, the region is quite pockmarked with craters. It's not a flat terrain. You have a lot of big, dark regions. The sunlight is slightly at an inclination, and it will be difficult to identify, in the optical ranges. So the orbiters will have to employ a lot of, multispectral spectrometers to really locate it. It will be a difficult task. It can take a few months or even a few years to locate it. But having said that, now that we have been assured that the Chandrayaan orbiter will last for as long as 7 years, we have some time to find it ourselves.
All right. Let me come to you, Mr. Lele, next. Do you believe that since we have a functional orbiter which is doing really well, and because people should actually remember that the orbiter is doing brilliantly, what we have potentially lost is the lander and the rover. But since we have the orbiter, do you believe that we can, within a finite period of time, just launch a mission with a lander and attempt this again?
I think we can really do that. If I have to just draw comparisons, recently China has launched a mission called Chang'e 4. The mission has got two components. Initially they launched a relay satellite, something akin to what our orbiter is, and subsequently they had launched lander and a rover mission. So I think India has already got an operational satellite, the orbiter, available, and it's going to remain there as per the recent reports for almost 7 years time. So there is always a window of opportunity, and here you don't have to carry much amount of a weight also, because orbiter was more than 2000 kgs. Your lander and a rover system is, I think, roughly could come around 1500 kgs or slightly more than that. Yeah. So you can definitely launch a system like this and take the advantage of orbiter, because you already know the configurations which you have been used. With the same configurations you can launch another mission. Yeah. And I think there is a window of opportunity, number one, and there is a possibility that normally when you prepare the systems like this, there is one main system prepared and another standby system prepared. So possibly,
so you may not need to fabricate
exactly.
A new
possibly there is a possibility. I am just saying that possibility ISRO could have a lander and a rover system already available with them.
Yeah, Dr. Kesan, that's interesting. In space, there's nothing which you do without a backup. Assuming that logic holds true over here as well, within a finite period of time, we might actually have a window to launch another mission. We don't need another orbiter, we need a lander. Are you excited at that prospect, or do you think, this is crazy speculation?
No, absolutely excited, because from morning I've been talking about this, because the weight is one a big issue, and as Professor mentioned, we can actually lessen the weight if we are going to only carry the lander and the rover. And I also had a wacky idea, because I work with children, so after a long discussion, we also thought like probably we should have a backup of one more lander and rover, so which means to say a constellation, probably a 2 rover and 2 lander going a backup. This is crazy, absolutely crazy, but I do agree, or everybody I think will agree, that science is crazy, and if you start thinking something like this, you will end up doing something different. Yeah. Well, here I'd also like to cite an example about our mission. It's a very, very minuscule mission when compared to this, but then again for children it's a huge mission. We send these helium balloons and payload carrying the helium balloons, and what happens is in couple of missions, what happened, we actually lost the signal when it landed. The payload landed when the helium balloon bursted, and when the parachute brought the payload down, we actually lost the signals. But probably because of our solar panels, 24 hours later, it revived and we got a beep and we could go locate and bring. Of course, it's Earth. And of course, there are a lot of possibilities, because as human beings, we can go and bring back the payload. Here, it's a huge, huge speculation.
Okay.
But again, nothing is impossible.
Dr. Ghosh, go ahead.
Yeah, yes. So about flying a backup lander and rover, first I think ISRO would want to figure out what actually went wrong. It's no point, I don't think they would want to make the same mistake again. So while, the hardware might be available, you really need to understand what really happened so that it doesn't happen again. And two is, I think there's a NASA mission called Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. So it should have the level of magnification required to sight, at least the Mars equivalent, which is the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. We use it for driving the rover, so we can see the rover from orbit. So if that is the scale, then it should be pretty much doable to see if and the more or less the landing ellipse. Yeah. It did not veer very far away from the landing ellipse. So it is certainly within the realm of possibility.
Okay. Dr. Giri, let's just look at the other aspect of what happened today. Incredibly emotional for all of us, those reporting it, broadcasting it, those scientists, of course, and of course the Prime Minister as well. But I just thought it was very commendable that the Prime Minister a few hours back came back to ISRO, met all of those scientists and said, look, this has happened. It's the journey which counts. We're going to do this despite the failure. How important was it for him to send that message? And if we can just roll out those images of the Prime Minister with Mr. Sivan, where he sort of hugged and embraced the ISRO chief and said that, look, it's okay, we're going to fight this and we are with you 100%. So, Dr. Giri, how important was that message for scientists who put their hearts onto this mission?
I have spent my early career as a lander scientist. I know landers are very precarious instruments. They face a lot of hazards as they travel to the surface of any celestial body, and they have a very short lifespan if you compare it with orbiters. If these landers are powered by solar panels, then their lifespan is even shorter. So when we say that the orbiter will last for several years, but what people are really interested in is the lander, because that's the vehicle that will traverse the surface of extraterrestrial bodies, and that fascinates us. We've sent orbiters to Mars, we've sent orbiters to the moon earlier with Chandrayaan 1, but this was the very first attempt where we planned a retropropulsive landing on the surface of the moon. We didn't succeed. There are lessons to learn, and success is never a teacher. Failure is the biggest teacher, and this is the message that the Prime Minister probably wanted to give to his team, because he's the leader of the pack. The Prime Minister's office leads the Department of Space and India's space ambitions. So, being a leader, I think that was a very nice gesture, and it will go a long way. ISRO has been able to really engage the common masses of India. They're all connected now, not just with their minds, but with their hearts. And I'm very sure that in the coming years, we'll have a Chandrayaan 2.1, not the 3, but a 2.1, because I expect Chandrayaan 3 to be a sample return mission. We want the samples back here in India to analyze.
All right, if we can just bring out that graph showing the trajectory, the third graphic that we have, then we can try and, so this is an important one, and I think we've got another version of this. And Ajay Lele, if you'd like to come in on this, that's the exact point when things started going wrong. If we have the other version of this as well, that'd be great. But it's that line in the middle which we are actually trying to, that indicated that everything was going well, and then there's a little bit of a blip, and then the line drops off sharply, and it's just right towards the end. This is the one that I really wanted to refer to. Mr. Lely, would you like to talk about this? Because the line in the middle, everything is going well, green in color, then there's a little red spot when it appears to be what I call a blip, and then it becomes uneven, and right towards the end it falls away, and the red line is the line, or the course, I assume, is what it was supposed to follow.
Definitely. I think what we call normally some amount of a kink which is visible into the line when the entire mission trajectory was being monitored. If you look at the entire mission trajectory, I think this trajectory is for 15 minutes or so. So 12 minutes appears to have gone well with a small kink in between. One is not sure that what could be the reason for it, but the recorrection of the kink part of it also appears to have happened immediately. That's why the things have became normal, and we only had witnessed some sort of a problem at the height of what ISRO has announced at 2.1 kilometers. So if you follow the entire trajectory and the entire path, first 10 minutes were supposed to be bringing the lander from 35 kilometers to 7.5 kilometers. Subsequently, it was supposed to bring it to 5 kilometers, and then it was supposed to move further down, and idea was that to get it at 400 meters and hover over a particular landing spot which has been already identified. Now at that height, there was a possibility that your radars or your lasers could have given you certain amount of good data and good indications, but it appears that the mission has deviated from the path at around 2 kilometers or maybe 1.5 kilometers or so. So the equipments which were meant to really give you a good amount of data probably have not been put in use because the height was slightly higher. So I think that could be one of the possibilities why ISRO scientists are still stretching their imagination that actually what must have happened. And if I read the ISRO chairman's statement correctly, it gives you certain amount of a hope that there is a loss of a communication only, but possibly the lander has landed onto the surface of the moon. But I think under those circumstances also it is of no use, because if you don't have a communication, only having a lander over there is of no use. Probably we may feel good about it that yes, soft landing was achieved. But the way the deviation is coming out after 12 minutes, I personally don't feel so that a soft landing must have happened.
What was the velocity, to the best of your knowledge, when things
the velocity was
deviating?
I think at that point it was around 50. It should have
50
been
kilometers an hour.
It should have been much lesser at that point, because at 2.1 kilometers, the exact figure I don't recollect, but at 2.1 kilometers the velocity was slightly higher when it came, and particularly
the vertical velocity.
Yeah, horizontal velocity should have been almost zero by that time.
But it wasn't.
But it wasn't. So there appears to be a problem, and the deviation clearly indicates that it has not done a soft landing. At least that is what my opinion is.
Yeah. Well, there's a real mystery over here, and perhaps we'll know in the days ahead what exactly has happened. The hunt for the Vikram lander certainly continues at this stage. Will there be a miracle? Will Vikram start communicating? I think the cynics among us believe that that's fairly unrealistic at this stage. The possibility of a crash on the lunar surface is fairly significant. It's a high possibility of that happening. That said, I think it's a recognition for all of us that this happens when we attempt very high-tech missions, and that all is not lost by no means. Hopefully there will be another Chandrayaan mission in the future. Hopefully India will get a lander and a probe successfully onto the lunar surface through a soft landing. Out of time, I'd like to thank all my guests. Till next time, goodbye.
Thank you.